Cars zoomed by as I walked a mile and a half from my school bus stop. I hated walking home alone. The men in my neighborhood were like hungry sharks, and I was fresh blood in the water. They seemed to have no control of themselves or their desire. I was 12 and already on my own. My mother paid the bills, but she was essentially checked out. She worked and slept. If I didn't learn how to cook, then I wouldn't eat. My mother was a roommate that was never home. I raised myself. When she was home, she would drink and berate me for ruining her life. Coming home sometimes was terrifying. If it was my mother's off day, I knew she'd be drunk and in a foul mood. She often had men over whose groping hands I had to dodge. Though I hated the long walk home from the school bus, it was often more peaceful than the zoo that was my home. "Damn!" a man shouted as he slowly drove past. I looked at him. He seemed to be in his 40s. He smiled at me. I quickly averted my eyes and looked at the ground. I had discovered in my 12 years of life not to look men in the eye. For some reason, they take it as you being interested in them. Even as a child, grown men still mistook my stare for something sexual. His car looked as filthy as he did. His teeth were rotten and a mix of black and yellow. He seemed as though he had not shaven or bathed in days. "Please don't stop," I whispered, praying that he would just continue driving and not try to talk to me. My slender body was barely starting to bud. Because of the stares and sexual advances of men, I intentionally wore my baggiest clothes to cover what little curves I had. But even that seemed not to be enough. I wasn't an ugly girl. My skin was mahogany brown, like wet brown sugar. My hair was long and well brushed. I was poor and stayed in my room to avoid my mother and her male friends. One of the few things I enjoyed in my young life was to just sit and brush my hair. It became a way for me to escape. As I brushed, my mind would wander to other places. I was told I was pretty, but I never saw it. I just thought men said that as a way to get into my pants. The car stopped suddenly and started to back up. My heart started to race. "You want to ride home?" the disheveled and clearly drunk man asked. I didn't answer. I kept my head down and walked a little faster. I had been harassed by men like him so much that I began to fear black men. I always felt safer when I was around different races of men. They never looked at me as anything but a little girl who deserved to be protected and have a childhood. When it came to black men, they all seemed to want one thing when it comes to women and girls. They did not care if I was a child, or if I was one bad day away from giving up and putting my mom's gun in my mouth and ending this life of mine that seemed to be doomed from the day I was born. All black men seem to care about is sex. They don't care if you want it or not. If you spurn their advances, they would get angry and attack you. I often wish that I was a different race of girl, not because I hated being a black girl. I was just terrified of black men and the blind eye that the rest of the world turns to us. The world could care less what happens to black girls. Black men knew this and took full advantage of it. "You hear me, little bitch," the dark-skinned man growled. My heart seemed like it would break through my chest. I was breathing hard, and it felt like I had run a marathon, but it was just fear. I kept my eyes on the ground and walked a little faster. I was nearly home. "You ignore me, bitch?" Before I could react, I felt something hit the side of my face hard. It seemed to explode on my cheek. I stumbled and fell to the ground. My head spun and my ears were ringing. "That's what you get for ignoring me, little skank," the man shouted and drove off. I don't know how long I lay there on the dirty, cracked sidewalk that was stained with God knows what. I wanted to touch my face, but I was afraid to. I didn't want to see the damage yet. I couldn't handle it. My heart was racing so fast it dulled any pain I should be feeling.